I mean, but it's just assholes and elbows in there. I mean, like there's people everywhere. So when somebody lets loose a 30-round clip out of an AK-47, you know somebody died. Somebody died, you know, because there's no way that those bullets don't hit somebody.
Welcome back to Bizarre Bazaar, and in this episode we hear from Wild Bill as he tells us about his first-hand account at being present at the La Joya Massacre, where on the 17th of December 2015, inmates were murdered in a gunfight which broke out within the prison. They had assault rifles, handguns, and a whole host of weapons, which they used to execute each other. It sounds horrific. Before we start, if you enjoy my videos, please hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. It helps the channel.
I'm prison inmate William Dathan Halbert, better known as Wild Bill. I'm serving 46 years for quintuple homicide inside the worst and most dangerous prison in Central America, which is located in the Republic of Panama. Before we get started, I've asked our host to include my Facebook group's link in the description box below. You can contact me directly there at Friends of Brother Bill. Friends of Brother Bill is a Facebook group obviously on Facebook. I'm the prison chaplain here on the inside. I'm also an inmate and the pastor of our church. And today we're talking about 2019's Christmas massacre inside the La Joya prison complex. That's where I am housed, the La Joya prison complex. There's 3 prisons here and about 12,000 men. On the 17th of December 2019, 15 inmates were murdered, lost their lives in an armed gun battle that occurred between inmates inside the prison where I am forced to live. I had a front row seat, and I want to tell you all about it. It's a complicated true tale of the inner workings of gang life. Before I can tell you the story and have it be understood by you, the listener, there are some basic things that you got to know about the way prisons are run in the Republic of Panama. I want to kind of paint you a picture of life very quickly and very briefly before we get started. The prisons of the Republic of Panama are controlled almost exclusively by the drug trade. The sale on the inside of cocaine and other narcotics is regulated in its entirety by a loose partnership between the national police and the incarcerated street gangs who inhabit the prisons. The police, who are charged with the external security of the prisons on the perimeter, the outside of the prisons, supply cocaine and firearms to the various street gangs who live inside the prison and totally control the prisons of the Republic of Panama. You heard me correctly when I said that the cops wholesale cocaine and give firearms to incarcerated street gangs. That's my reality. I live that every day. Next time we'll explore the ins and outs of prison life and the relationship between the police and the incarcerated street gangs. We'll go through prison life and the corruption that makes a Panamanian prison nothing more than a modern-day concentration camp. But today, we're going to talk about the 2019 La Joya prison complex massacre that happened at Christmas time. I invite the listener to Google 2019 La Joya prison massacre. I've actually sent a link to our host. There you can confirm the absolute authenticity of the events in this biography by me, Wild Bill, who lived through and witnessed the whole thing. Pavillon 14 held the street gang named Baghdad. Now, some 300 of the hardest criminals in the Republic of Panama lived in this time in 2019, right before Christmas, in Pavillon 14. What is a pavillon? A pavillon is a freestanding cell block, a building designed to house prisoners. There are about 25 of them here in this complex, and each are designed to house about 125 men, but in reality, all house more than double that number. Pavillon 14, Baghdad, held 300 gang members of the most powerful street gang in Panama by the same name, Baghdad. Now, obviously, Panama and Baghdad's a long way from Panama, but I think they chose the name Baghdad for their gang simply because, I don't know, I think that they thought it was like a hard place to be or something. So, now, and that's a street gang on the outside of the prison, but it also acts on the inside, and it's the biggest street gang in Panama. Now, the problem occurred when 60 kilograms of cocaine on the outside went missing. The gang war that erupted inside Pavillon 14 occurred as part of a civil war between the two most powerful leaders of the street gang, Baghdad. One was a free man, the big boss at the time, and one was incarcerated, an underboss. The big boss, who we won't name because I don't want murdered myself, lost 60 kilograms of cocaine to the smaller boss on the inside. It had occurred several times in the past before, and there was a certain animosity that was growing there between them. The boss on the inside, we're going to call him Jelly Roll. That's what we're going to call him. That's not his name, but we're going to call him that because I think it fits him very well. Well, Jelly Roll was becoming very secure in his power on the inside in prison. Jelly's sentence was over 50 years, and he knew he wasn't never getting out of jail. He's never going to get out of prison. So his world is on the inside, and Jelly is, to this day, a big, fat, dark-skinned man who looks like a darker version of Fat Bastard from Austin Powers. If you remember Austin Powers and you remember Fat Bastard, I swear that Jelly looks like a Latino version of Fat Bastard. Jelly Roll ruled Pavilion 14 with an iron fist. His allegiance to the gang Baghdad was a huge inconvenience to him. It was becoming very inconvenient to him. Taking orders from the big boss on the outside was becoming a real drag for him. Jelly was the boss on the inside and decided to go rogue. When the big boss on the outside confronted Jelly Roll about the missing cocaine, Jelly's answer was to declare war with a Pearl Harbor-style sneak attack. Jelly ordered the killing of 2 high-level gang operatives on the inside whom he knew to be completely loyal to the big boss on the outside. Jelly was sure that with those 2 dead, the rest of the brass, so to speak, of the Baghdad crew would just simply fall in line behind his command. Jelly prepped his crew of enforcers, some 16 or 17 hardcore killers, and they murdered the 2 loyal capos on the inside. Now, this is how it happened. He planned the killings to coincide with a family visit at Christmas time when he knew that the majority of the rival faction's agents would be outside of the cell block in the visitors building, which is a separate building. And there's quite like 400 yards in between them, so it's very far away. And therefore they would be unarmed. They would be outside and unarmed. And Jelly's men waited until the visit was in full swing and murdered the 2 opposing team's leaders inside the pavilion while the other operatives were all outside. Murders here, I want you to understand something, but murders in prison here are a daily occurrence. Somebody dies every single day in where I am here. And nothing much is thought about that, especially if you're murdered by, like, knives. They get a little pissy when they start killing each other with guns, but, murders with knives, it's just a normal occurrence here. And Jelly's plan was to decapitate his rival's power and conquer everybody else through the fear that would occur. But it did not go how Jelly had planned. The 2 rival gang members were murdered. They were knifed to death, and then their heads were actually chopped off with machetes, and they were held up as trophies in the center of the pavilion. Jelly had a prophet, a sorcerer, like, I don't know, there's like a satanic priest that lives in that, or lived in that time, in that pavilion who did like black magic. I don't really understand a whole lot about those sort of things, but it's really true. And he used the 2 heads in some sort of a Santeria ritual in front of the crowd of inmates. But the murders were, even though they were planned very well and carried out in a way that would not rouse too much ruckus amongst the authorities, the problem with Jelly's hostile takeover plan was that everyday gang members did not fall in line with Jelly's rebellion. When they saw and understood what was going down, many voices began to complain. The people began to hey, this isn't what we wanted. We're not down with this. And when those voices began to demand justice for their beloved murdered, fellow brothers, their leaders, Jelly had 2 more people killed. But this time they used firearms. And the rival crew, remember that the rival crew was in the visit when, outside of the pavilion. They heard the gunshots, plow, plow, on the inside in the desk. And they rushed back as a group, like 30 of them. They rushed back to the pavilion to see what was going on. And as they entered the building, 6 more were killed by Jelly Roll himself, who was sporting an AK-47. The fully automatic 30-round clips were sprayed into the inmates returning from their visit, and 6 fell dead immediately, making the death toll now 10. Now we're at 10 dead. A pot-shot gun battle ensued inside the pavilion, after which, after over the next 8 hours, 5 more inmates were murdered. And just before dark, on the 17th of December, the police stormed the pavilion and retook and the massacre was ended. Retook the pavilion, and the massacre was ended. Now, listening to this story, you might be asking yourself some questions, and I'd like to help you frame in the real life events as clearly as possible. So I'm going to answer two of those questions, and if there are any more after, we'll go through them. And the first question I would have if I was listening to this is, how are there assault rifles inside the prison in the hands of prisoners? And the short answer is that the police officers give arms of all kinds, assault rifles, pistols, machetes, Rambo-style knives, to the street gangs on the inside who sell the cocaine. And they do this to protect their business interest in that cocaine that they, the cops, front to the gangs to sell. And if you want the long answer to that, you're going to have to tune into the next episode that I do with Mike to hear about exactly how all that works when we deal with prison life on the inside of one of Panama's concentration camps. And the second question that I would have if I was listening to this is, why are you telling this story, Bill? And I want you to know that I'm not making a dime off the telling of this story. I'm the pastor of the church, and I'm telling it because the world needs to know what Panama is hiding inside their festering human rights nightmare concentration camps. I'm hoping that someone will listen to this message and want to get in touch with me and want to help me make Panama live up to their obligations to we incarcerated cattle that live under the national and international law. I mean, there's national Panamanian laws and international laws that protect prisoners' rights, and that, and that, like, what kind of rehabilitation do we have? None. And I've been here in hell for 12 years. On the 27th of June of this year, I have been in Panamanian prison for 12 years, day for day, and I'm sick of seeing so much death, and the human suffering is becoming hard for me to bear. And I changed my life through Jesus Christ, and I want to help other people too, but Panama wants to silence me. It's doing a very good job of it as well. Panama and the international community love the current state of affairs of Panama's prison system. We're going to talk about that in third installment. If there's any questions, I'll answer them right now.
Okay, Bill, thank you very much. That was fascinating as ever. I do have a few questions. You said you had front row tickets, like front row view of what happened. Can you expand on that?
Okay, we're going to talk about this later in another episode, hopefully, but I'm in Sector C, and we're going to talk about what Sector C is. But it's a silencing facility when the government gets really pissed off at you. That's where they put you, and that's where I am. And we'll discuss that another thing. But I was in cell 56, standing on the metal toilet, looking out the window at Pavilion 14. I'm in a different pavilion. I'm in Pavilion 1 of Sector C, but right behind me is Pavilion 14. So I was watching these guys as they killed one another. Also, being here in prison, all the guys that have cell phones, we all passed around the photos of the chopped off heads, and so I mean we've seen everything that's going on there. And those guys, as I said, were sent to me to like the house to put where they will be least problematic, and there were 16 of them, and I put them in Pavilion 2-2. When I say Pavilion 2-2, Pavilion 2, Patio 2, this is a really different setup here. This is a really restrictive setup where I am. The pavilions, that's an interesting point as well. The pavilions don't have police in them. They're governed completely by the street gangs. There's a cop that opens and closes the door, and that's it. On the inside, it's completely, there are no cops, no guards, none of that sort of stuff. And so the inside of the pavilions are completely governed by the street gangs themselves, and that's how it works here.
Okay, what's it like when you see a man holding 2 decapitated heads? Are you fearing for your own life at this point?
Yeah, a little. I mean, it's hard to believe that these sort of things, that human beings can do these sort of things, because I was a hitman on the outside, and I killed people for a living, but in a really professional way, which doesn't, I mean, even though it was very, very, it was hand to hand, but it wasn't personal or anything. And here the things are so personal, and so, like they kill somebody, right? And that's one thing. A dead body's one thing. But when you hack his head off and they're dancing around and carrying them, I mean, it's like, I don't know, something out of Heart of Darkness by Conrad. I mean, it's like crazy. It's hard to even wrap your head around, and seeing them, seeing like a real gun battle. I mean, like, I don't think very few people have actually ever seen that. I mean, unless you've been like the Iraq War or something, or in Afghanistan or something, most people have never even seen anything like that. And it's just incredible to see people shooting at each other and killing one another. I mean, you don't even. It's hard to even believe it's actually happening.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to only be able to imagine that as well. What are the authorities doing during this whole massacre?
During the massacre, all the authorities retreated outside of the prison. They're like, oh God, they're shooting. I mean, they've got guns and stuff too, but they, being Panamanians and being how they regrouped outside and just like redoubled the guard on the outside of the perimeter so nobody could escape, and then waited on reinforcements to storm. And then when they had like a blue million cops on the outside, then they come in. They don't give a shit what happens to us. They don't care how many people are killed on the inside. They just don't want anybody to escape. And so that's basically what happened. The president, you can read in the link that I sent you, anybody that's listening to this can read what the president, we're going to try to figure out how the guns got in there. We're going to talk about that next time as well. I mean, like an AK-47 don't fit in some girl's ass. You know what I'm saying? That's coming to visit. An AK-47 sold by the cops. It's the only way there's no other way that something, or even a kilogram of cocaine. How are you going to get a kilogram of cocaine in a prison? No woman smuggled that in her vagina. You know what I'm saying? Into a visit. So there's some real things that Panama has to answer for about what's happening here, and the human rights on the inside here are so horrific is the right word. I mean, just absolutely, it's terrifying. And the whole point of me speaking to you, I'm not trying to make any money. I don't have any. There's no way to make any money off this. I'm trying to get some help. I need somebody. Like I talked to Amnesty International, and again we'll talk again. Amnesty International asked me to please stop sending them emails. I mean, like nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares about what's happening here. And you talk to human rights groups, and they're like, oh, that's terrible. Have a nice day. Take care of yourself. Nobody's interested in helping. I'm trying to get the United Nations involved, and nobody's interested in. And then so that's what I think that's what I'm going to do for the next year of my life is be a crusader, trying to bring somebody. Hey, somebody needs to come and see what's happening here, because this is hell on earth, and it shouldn't exist. And it's sick that Panama can get away with treating human beings that way, and then they complain about their criminal problem. I mean, well, they're the biggest organization of the biggest university of criminality that could possibly exist is exactly where I live. This should be a place of rehabilitation, not a place where you go and get a doctorate in murder, So that's what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Yeah, I understand. I know you said that your sector was like watching what was happening, but was everyone in the open prison? Were they all fighting? Like, were they all gang members, like with guns? What was going on?
Well, they're all gang members. And understand, a street gang here is like, there's 300 street gang members in there, but not everybody's armed with guns, and there's a hierarchy in it. If you're just a regular guy, you're just, you're not a soldier. You might be a guy who cleans the floor. You might be a guy who has a store inside. I know that there were two. That's another thing I left out, and I shouldn't have left out. The store on the inside, like, let's see what happens when you want to buy a bag of crisps or a bag of chips or a Coca-Cola. How do you do that? Well, there's a couple of guys who have permissions that they had to bribe the Panamanian government to do in each pavilion. In each pavilion, there's a couple of guys who bribe the authorities to give them the permission to bring in food and stuff from the outside to sell. And then the government like squeezed the piss out of those guys. And also the prisoners squeezed the piss out of those poor guys. And, they're trying to make a living, trying to just survive. And anyway, what happened is there was two of those guys who had stores on the inside, and the way it works is you have a certain amount of credit with the store, and then at the visit you have to pay. Every time there's a visit you have to pay because your family brings you money. The only time you can bring money is when your family comes to visit you, and they bring like $40 or $50. So the $40-$50 comes in, then you have to go inside and settle your account, and then you can buy more stuff. But so what happened is it was like right before a visit, right? It was the day of the visit, and only one visit had taken place. So the first thing that everybody did was murder the shopkeepers so that nobody would have to pay them. They got murdered simply because they're holding debt on the gang members, and if they kill them, then nobody has to pay them, and then they can all use that money to buy cocaine. So, I mean, this is where I live. It's a crazy place. But on the inside, even though they're all gang members, not all of them are soldiers. Being part of a gang here doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be carrying a knife to go and kill somebody or whatever. It means that you just are affiliated with that gang, and you can live in that pavilion. You can live in that cell block. To answer your question, which I didn't do, what was everybody doing? Most people were just like with their heads down, hoping, praying to God that no stray bullet hits them, I mean, but it's just assholes and elbows in there. I mean, like there's people everywhere. So when somebody lets loose a 30-round clip out of an AK-47, somebody died. Somebody died, because there's no way that those bullets don't hit somebody. And so that's the issue. Most people are just standing. I think most of the guys are probably, hiding behind walls, hiding behind toilets with their heads between their legs, trying to kiss their ass goodbye, that sort of thing.
Okay, I've got one more question. Immediately after the shooting stops and in the following days, what's the atmosphere like?
Very hard because the cops come down on everybody, even on us, even though we're not in that pavilion, the cops come down hard. For instance, like for us, they drug us all outside to do a search, even though we had nothing to do with it. We're in a different building altogether. They drug us outside to do a search. We're handcuffed, but with our hands behind our back, in our underwear, just in your underwear, and shirtless, laying face down, and the cops walk by up and down, spraying everybody with gas, with pepper spray on your back. You're screaming bloody murder at. It's a really horrific thing. Anybody who sticks their head up gets it smashed by a cop with a baton. That's the sensitivity training that we get here. So I mean, like, they do whatever the hell they don't give you any attention at all. But then when they do give you attention, it's like horrible abuse beyond anything even anybody would even imagine. So I remember that day. The next day, I knew it was going to be bad. So everybody hides their cell phones, hides all their stuff, And we're like waiting on it. And so sure enough, here they come down, comes the crushers, and they send like 50 or there's 21 guys where I am right now, 21 guys. In that time, I think there were 23. Back in 2019, I think there was 23. They took us all outside. So everybody outside in your underwear, everybody has like boxer shorts or briefs on, and everybody goes outside. They lay us all down, everybody has to lay down face down. And while they're searching us, some little chicken shit cop walks up and down spraying everybody's back, naked back, with pepper spray. And I don't know if you know what that feels like, but it's really hell. And so everybody's screaming and bloody murder, and there's one standing there with a stick waiting on somebody to stick his head up so he can bash it back down, So that was the experience after. And then it's really tense afterwards as well, because all the prisoners also they're not sure what's going to happen. Nobody knows, anybody. And so like 3 days after that happened, they brought me 16 guys, said, house these, find out where to put them. I'm like, shit. And so I'm the pastor of the church here. I'm the chaplain, the prison chaplain here. And so part of my job is to try to put people together that are not going to kill one another and do the very best job I can. And so I asked the police to clean one patio, one mini cell block out and put them in there, because there's no way I can't put them anywhere else because everybody else wants to kill them, And so that was the aftermath.
Bill, thank you very much for talking to us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, Mike. God bless.